Okay, so I have a lot of different cameras for YouTube, but I promise I'm not a hoarder. I mean, I physically can't be. Look at where I live. No, but really each camera has its own specific purpose within my kit as a YouTube creator. I've got my sit down video setup, and I've got two different vlogging setups, this one and this one. And I've got a few specialty cameras for pretty specific purposes. But it wasn't always like this. I built up my video gear as my content creation needs expanded. So today I want to explain why I have all these cameras, what they do for me as a video creator, and whether or not you should get them too. I really believe in slowly building up your kit. There's no need for a massive shopping spree. So we're going to take this step by step in the order that I think you should get them in. If you need them at all, which you might not. But honestly, I'm such a nerd for cameras. I love talking about this stuff, so I'm really excited to get into it. So I firmly believe every creator should start with their phone. For one thing, you've already got it. And for another, if you're just getting started, you don't even know for sure yet if you like making videos. So let's just take a pause before we spend $1,000 on a camera. If you are gonna film with your phone though, please use these settings, trust me. You're gonna wanna set your phone to film in 4K 30 frames per second, at most compatible. The most compatible thing is something that I discovered once I really dove into vlogging with my phone, and I realized Premiere Pro does not like the iPhone's optimized footage. So just make sure you choose most compatible. And for the love of God, turn off HDR. You will thank me later when you realize that all of your footage that was looking so gross and washed out, it's really just because you were shooting in HDR, and once you turn that off, it looks amazing. I spent way too long stumped by why my iPhone footage looked terrible in Premiere and why it kept glitching, and it turns out you just need to set HDR off and most compatible as your video settings. Okay, so with every camera we're going to talk about today, there are benefits and there are reasons why you may want to upgrade from it, why it's not quite good enough. So let's talk about the iPhone's advantages. The biggest one, you've probably already got it, so it's kind of the most affordable because you've already paid for it. But a really big one is it's discreet and low key. It doesn't really feel that weird to film things on your phone while you're out and about, because like everybody does that from time to time. You'd probably feel less awkward filming with a setup like this than you would with a setup like this. It just draws less attention. And finally, the quality is pretty darn great. When you have the right conditions, you can get footage that looks and sounds just as great as something off of a Sony camera. So what do I practically use this camera for? Lately, this has actually been my primary vlogging camera for my van life channel, Katie and Dan in a Van. I found it to be really convenient for our run and gun style of vlogging, where we just want to pick up and start filming stuff randomly as we're going about our day. Okay, so on the flip side, why might you want to upgrade? So storage and file organization are probably going to be your primary motivator for wanting to upgrade from your phone to a dedicated camera. It is possible to make it work, but I'll be honest with you, it is quite cumbersome and annoying because most of us use our phones for so many different purposes, not just for vlogging. It is possible to stay on top of this, but it requires a lot of diligence and a lot of time. Because the thing is, likely you'll need to sort through a lot of screenshots and other stuff that you've got saved on your phone that just isn't relevant to your vlog. So if your filming has gotten to a volume where it's just way too big of a task to try to store your footage on your phone and sort through it, then it might be time to invest in a separate dedicated camera. And if that is the case for you, then I would recommend the Sony ZV1. This is my other vlog camera that I use when I'm making vlog style content for this channel. And why is that? Well, it's because normally for this channel, when I'm filming vlogs, they're a little bit more intentional and planned out than the casual vlogs that I make on my van life / travel channel. And this way, the file organization is so much easier. Now, the reason why I say this camera specifically is honestly, the Sony ZV1 has been my #1 recommendation for new creators for a while now. It's small, it's compact, and it's more affordable than interchangeable lens cameras that you might be looking at as an alternative. Currently, you can get the original Sony ZV1 for $648 USD, though if you are buying one now, I would really recommend getting the ZV1 Mark II, which is currently going for $798, but it has a much nicer lens. It's a little bit wider. Where the original ZV1 at its widest has a 24mm equivalent lens, the Mark II has an 18mm equivalent lens, which is just a bit wider and nicer for vlogging in my opinion. So what are the advantages of this camera over an iPhone? #1, file storage. As you'd expect, this camera has a handy dandy SD card slot. it. This means no more sorting through your camera roll and no more running out of storage on your phone. Well, okay, you still might run out of storage on your phone, but it won't be the fault of your vlogs. This camera, and really any camera with an SD card slot, has that advantage over an iPhone. It just has a much more streamlined file organization process. Another big one is video quality. So I know I just said iPhone footage looks great, but I did say in the right conditions. The ZV-1 does a much better job in subpar lighting scenarios. Even after iPhone footage starts to look pretty grainy, the ZV-1 is still going strong. Another advantage the ZV-1 has: audio quality. Once again, I will say the iPhone audio is good in the right conditions. And as you can see, especially if there's any wind whatsoever, the iPhone does not hold up very well in terms of audio. The ZV-1 fares out better here in my experience, primarily because you can easily attach an external microphone to it. Now look, here's where the difference mostly comes down to user experience and preference. But as someone who has done a lot of vlogging on both my iPhone and my Sony ZV-1, I have a lot of opinions. Now, you could say, Katie, you can put an external microphone on your iPhone. And that is true. And sometimes I do that. And it actually sounds really good when you go to the extra effort. However, it is just a fact that it is easier and more convenient to put an external microphone on a camera like this, primarily because you are only using this camera to film. Whereas with your phone, you're probably using it to message people, to take pictures, to film, to use your GPS, to look things up online. And so because you're using this for so many different things, it's kind of annoying for it to have a microphone attached to it. And I have personally found, even though I have a great mic setup to plug into this phone, I don't find myself doing it very often because it's just so convenient to pull this out of your pocket and start filming. And the audio does suffer because of that. So I rest my case. It is more convenient to have a separate dedicated camera that has its own little microphone attached that you only use for filming, unlike your phone that you're using for a million different things. So clearly I've really been singing the praises of this camera, but it does have its limitations. So let's talk about why you might want to upgrade. The main reason is really its limited focal length. It is a point and shoot camera. It comes with a built-in lens, and that lens only has so many different focal lengths that you can use. If you wanted a wider angle lens or a telephoto lens that allows you to zoom in really far, you're not going to be able to do that with the ZV-1. You're going to need an interchangeable lens camera. And I have just the one for you. This is my Sony ZVE-10. I love this camera. I've been using it for about a year and a half now, and it's the one that I use to film most of my sit-down videos. Currently, I have it paired with my Sony 11mm f1.8 lens, but we're going to talk more about lenses in a minute. And most often when I'm shooting with this, I will use my Sony ECM G1 microphone. I love this one because it connects through the wireless hot shoe mount here, which means I have great audio with no extra wires hanging around. Okay, so if you want to use this camera, I need to share a few key hacks that's going to make the experience a lot better. So I'll be real with you, this camera is kind of notorious for overheating when you shoot in 4K for long periods of time. I'm talking like a 20-minute long clip or longer, but there is a way to fix that, so let me show you. So you're going to go into your settings and you're going to navigate to setup and then power setting options, and then go into auto power off temp and make sure that it's set to high. Secondly, when you're filming a longer segment, like this is something I do when I film my video podcast episodes, once your camera is all set up and ready to go, you're going to open up that little battery door hatch and leave it open while you're filming. This just provides the teeniest little bit of ventilation that helps to keep it from overheating just a little bit longer. When I do both of these two things, I've been able to film up to 40 minutes long without my ZVE-10 overheating. It could maybe go longer than that, but I've never tried. That's just the longest I've needed to film. So it is really possible to make use of this camera and avoid the overheating issues if you do those things. Okay, another key thing that I love to do with this camera is customize the file names. I've been talking a lot about file organization, and as you start filming more complex videos with different cameras, it's going to become important that you know where those files came from. By default, the video files out of the Sony cameras are going to be like C with a bunch of numbers afterwards, which can make it hard to distinguish between, say, the files from your ZV-1 and the files from your ZVE-10. So if you go into your menu and go to setup again, and then go to set file name, and I've personally entered the name for each camera. So the files out of this camera say ZVE-10 dash and then whatever number. That way, when I have a collection of clips from both the ZVE-10, the ZV-1, my GoPro, my phone, I can tell where each of these files came from. Okay, so the main reason really why you'd want to add this camera to your kit, above and beyond the ZV1 is the interchangeable lenses. So these are the lenses that I have. I have the Sony 11mm f1.8, the Sony 18 to 105mm f4, and the 70 to 300mm. I use the 11mm most of the time when I'm filming my YouTube videos. It is perfect for shooting in small spaces because it's so wide. However, it is a prime lens, so it doesn't really zoom except for the ZVE-10's built-in electronic zoom feature, but it only goes this far. The 18 to 105 is my general all-purpose lens, especially for travel, because it has such a wide range. Finally, I've got the 70 to 300, which is quite a specialized lens. Honestly, I just got this for wildlife photography and videography, so chances are you wouldn't need something like this, but as you can see, it zooms in really far. So I get all of this talk of different cameras and focal lengths might be overwhelming if you're just getting started with all this stuff. But I firmly believe that learning new things is one of the best things you can do to stay on top of your game and stay inspired as a creator. So I want to encourage you not to shy away from it. You want to learn how to shoot in manual, or how to take better photos, or create some cool designs for yourself? You can learn all of this and more on Skillshare, the sponsor of today's video. Skillshare is the largest online learning platform with thousands of classes for creative people. Skillshare has classes across topics like design, photography, video editing, and more. I am personally looking forward to taking some Skillshare classes this summer to learn some new things, which I think is crucial in staying creative and improving your craft. I'm planning to take this class from Skillshare called Creative Writing Bootcamp. Start a brand new story by author Mila Goldberg. I think storytelling is one of the primary ways you can make your YouTube videos more engaging and fulfilling to watch, and that is something that I'd personally like to improve. You can join me in improving your creative skills this summer on Skillshare, and in fact, if you use my link, you'll get 1 month free. The first 500 people to use my link will get 1 month free of Skillshare, so make sure you check that out, and thanks again to Skillshare for sponsoring today's video. All right, back to the ZVE-10. This camera is quite versatile and there really is a lot that you can do with it. So why would you ever want to upgrade? Well, I'm glad you asked. You might want to upgrade from just shooting on the ZVE-10 if you want to get specific kind of specialty shots that you might need special cameras to make happen. Which brings us to the very exciting rapid fire round of this video, where I'm going to show you my last 3 cameras and what I use them for. So here are my 3 specialty cameras. We've got the GoPro Hero 12, the Insta360 X3, and my DJI Mini 3 drone. Each of these have their own specific purposes in my videos, and I'll be honest with you, I mostly use them for creating vlogs for my vlog channel. For the type of videos that I make here on my main channel, there's just not a huge need for drone footage or 360 footage, but maybe I should incorporate it more often. I don't know. You can let me know in the comments. So let's talk about what each of these little guys do. Starting off with the GoPro really has 2 jobs in my world. The first is actually as a dash cam. When we are traveling around in our van, we keep this GoPro mounted on our dash in the media mod case, like you can see it now, with this microphone on top, so that we can capture the views that we're seeing as we're driving, but also so that we can quickly flip it around and film our own reactions to what we're seeing, which is why the microphone is so important, because if you know anything about GoPros, you know the audio is not great. So this camera mostly lives on the dash of the van, but the second job that this guy does is of course as an action camera, primarily as an underwater camera. So obviously if we're going to take it underwater, I take off this microphone and the case, make sure it's all waterproofed, and then you can take it swimming. The GoPro was the first kind of specialty camera that I ever added to my kit way back in the day, and there's just always something kind of fun and novel about being able to film underwater. So of these 3 additions, this would probably be the first one that I would recommend. Next up is the Insta360. Okay, this little guy has actually been a game changer for travel vlogging, mostly because of the cool, impossible looking angles that you can capture. It has an extendable selfie stick that is masked out automatically when you go to edit the footage, so you don't have to worry about doing any of that. So essentially your selfie stick is invisible and it kind of looks like somebody else is filming you. This is perfect if you travel solo or even as a couple and you want to get footage of the 2 of you. Dan and I use this camera a ton, especially when we we were traveling in Europe to be able to film ourselves walking around a new place without having to set down a camera and like worrying about it getting stolen as you walk by. And finally, we have the DJI Mini 3 drone. In my opinion, this is a perfect drone for beginners. It's less than 250 grams, which means you don't need a drone license for it. And you can capture really stunning landscape or establishing shots with this. Some of my favorite shots we've ever captured on this drone are of us driving our van through Mexico. Now, all three of these cameras have pretty specific purposes, and not every creator is going to need them depending on the style of videos that you're making. But I thought I'd mention them nonetheless in case you're interested in getting some of these specialty shots, which I personally love to include and I think add a lot to the character of your video. And that is every camera that I use to make my YouTube videos. If you want a quick cheat sheet guide to all of the tech that I mentioned in this video and more, I put together a free gear guide for content creators that's linked in the description. And that includes links to everything as well in case you want to get one of these. At the end of the day, you really can just get started with your phone, like I mentioned. But if you're like me, you probably will find it fun slowly expanding your camera kit as you expand your abilities as a creator. If you are planning to vlog on your phone though, I made an entire ultimate guide video to the settings, the accessories, the processes that I would recommend you use. And trust me, that was through a lot of frustrating trial and error because I didn't know any of that stuff when I picked up my phone to start vlogging with it. And I really wish I knew it sooner. So make sure you go watch that video next if you are gonna shoot with your phone. And as always, thank you so much for watching. I hope you're having adventures and following your dreams, and I'll catch you in the next video. Bye.